there was a time when being single was more dangerous than being dead. Literally. Welcome to Qing-era China. You're alive. Congratulations. But your parents, not so thrilled. You're still unmarried, and that's a problem. For your family, for your ancestors, and apparently for a dead boy in the next village. So, guess what? You're getting married. To him. To a corpse. The matchmaker smiles like this is the happiest day of your life. The coffin is polished. The incense is lit. And you? You're dressed in red silk, standing beside someone who smells like mothballs and regret. This isn't a ghost story. This is tradition. Before we begin, please like the video and comment below where you're from and what time it is. I'll like every one of your comments. Now, dim your lights, grab your blanket, and close your eyes. Tonight, you're not just hearing a bedtime tale, you're living it. Because in Qing China, love wasn't about hearts, it was about harmony, even if your spouse was 6 feet under. Picture yourself in a lantern-lit courtyard under the evening sky. The air is thick with the sweet smoke of incense and the faint scent of funeral paper ash. Somewhere in the distance, a dog howls. Or was that something else? You shiver, drawing your embroidered shawl tighter. It's not the cold that gives you chills. It's the knowledge of what's coming. You've known all your life that marriage is your destiny. But you never imagined your wedding would take place next to a wooden coffin. In the dim light, your mother is fussing over your bridal veil. It's the same brilliant red as any blushing bride's attire, symbolizing joy and good fortune. Only tonight, that joyful color feels eerily out of place. Red paper double happiness symbols are pasted on the walls, fluttering gently in the night breeze. Underneath them, white funeral lanterns cast long shadows. Wedding decorations and mourning ornaments side by side. A contradiction that sums up your new life perfectly. Your heart pounds like a drum in your chest as you glance at the figure beside you. He's propped up within his coffin, dressed in a fine silk robe that he never got to wear while alive. His face is pale, almost waxy, and in the flicker of lantern light you could swear he almost looks back at you. The truth is, he's not looking at anything now. The young man, your groom, died weeks ago. You catch a whiff of something stale beneath the incense. Maybe it's the embalming herbs or just your imagination running wild. Either way, it takes all your willpower not to gag. This was not how your wedding night was supposed to smell. Like any young woman, you had pictured a different wedding. One with laughter. A living groom's warm hand holding yours. Perhaps the patter of little feet in the future. Marriage was supposed to be a bright milestone, your reward after fulfilling your duties of filial piety. Instead, you are here, draped in bridal red but surrounded by death's hue of white. The normal promises of a marriage, companionship, children growing old together, have been taken from the script. All that remains is duty, and a deep, primal hope that this ritual will set things right that feel so terribly wrong. How did it come to this? To marrying a boy who can't even hold your hand, let alone say, "I do"? To standing here, a living bride wed to a dead groom? To answer that, we have to understand the world you live in. This is Qing Dynasty China, and in your village, being unmarried at your age is almost a crime against nature, or at least a crime against family. In a place where family is everything, and ancestors pull the strings from the afterlife, A single woman is a loose thread begging to be tied, and if no living man is available or willing to tie that knot, well, a dead one will have to do. In your community, they call this tradition Minghun in hushed tones, literally dark marriage or netherworld marriage. In your village dialect, they sometimes just say yin marriage, a marriage of the shadows. In this society, marriage isn't just a union of two people. It's a union of two families and two realms, the living and the dead. Dying unwed is a terrifying prospect here. People whisper that if you depart this world single, your spirit will wander endlessly, hungry and alone. An unmarried ghost is thought to be a restless ghost, one that might hover around its former home, sulking and causing trouble out of envy or despair. No one wants that, not the living, and, supposedly, not the dead either. So marriages are arranged not just for the living, but sometimes between the living and the dead, to keep cosmic balance. Harmony must be maintained at all costs. The yin and yang of life and death need to be matched in proper pairs. If a soul leaves the world without a partner, it upsets the natural order. At least, that's what your elders say. And here in your parents' eyes, you are about to upset the order. You've lived through your teenage years without being betrothed. You're edging dangerously close to old maid territory. Never mind you're only in your late teens. In Qing China, that's prime marrying age. Your parents have tried to find you a husband among the village boys. But good matches are hard to find, and time was running out. Then fate, or misfortune, intervened. Last month, the Li family in the next village lost their only son. He was barely 20. A tragic illness took him overnight. You remember the funeral, the wails of grief echoing over the rice paddies, the smoke of burning paper gifts spiraling into a gray sky. Perhaps you even attended, lighting a joss stick and bowing respectfully before his portrait. At the time, you felt sorrow for the young life cut short. You didn't realize that his misfortune and yours were about to become intertwined. The rumors started soon after. Some said the dead boy's spirit was appearing in his mother's dreams, weeping that he was lonely on the other side. Others claimed that a stray cat kept yowling outside the Li household every night. A bad omen, surely a restless ghost. The Lis were desperate. Their son had died unmarried, and in your community that's an emergency that transcends even death. A bachelor ghost in the family could spell disaster, illness, accidents, financial ruin, unless he's made happy somehow. What could possibly placate a love-lorn ghost? The answer was obvious to the village elders. He needed a wife, a ghost bride. Meanwhile, your own family had a problem. You, still at home, unmarried, and each passing month an increasing embarrassment. Your parents prayed to the ancestors for a solution. Little did they know the solution would knock on their door wearing a bright red dress and a mournful expression. The matchmaker came bearing a peculiar proposal. Would they consider marrying you, their living, breathing daughter, to the dead son of the Li family? It was unorthodox, yes, but not unheard of. It would save face for everyone. The Lis would gain a daughter-in-law and assure their boy's contentment in the afterlife. Your family would finally have you settled, albeit in the most macabre way imaginable. You can imagine the shock and tears that night when your parents first told you. Marry a corpse? It sounded like the plot of a ghost story told to frighten children. At first, you flatly refused through sobs. "Please, no," you begged. Your mother cried with you. Your father stormed and paced in anguish. They themselves had argued before even coming to you. Your father had shouted, "She's our daughter, not some sacrificial lamb." To which your mother replied through tears, "What choice do we have? Do you want her to be ostracized? Do you want our son's prospects ruined if his sister's unmarried ghost haunts us?" In the end, the weight of tradition and fear tipped the scales. They approached you, voices trembling, promising that it was for the best, that at least you'd be well provided for. Faced with their desperation and your own uncertain future, your resistance faltered. To your parents, it was a serious offer, perhaps the only offer. They convinced themselves it was for your own good. Better to be a respected widow of a dead husband than a spinster looked down upon by society. And better to wed a ghost now than risk becoming one yourself later, at least if you ask the village soothsayer. After many heated whispers and sleepless nights, the decision was made. You were to become a spirit bride. Now, here you are, living that decision. The matchmaker has done her job. Both families have agreed on the terms of this most unusual union. In the eyes of your community and the eyes of heaven and earth, tonight you will be wed. Never mind that one half of the couple lies cold and silent. Looking at the coffin beside you, you can't help but wonder. Is he really in there watching? Is his ghost hovering nearby, eager to see his bride? The thought sends a new shiver down your spine. But maybe, just maybe, he's as nervous as you are. After all, it's his big day too, even if he had no say in it either. Whatever the case, there's no backing out now. The hour is approaching. The priest has arrived to perform the rites. Your fate is sealed with red silk and incense smoke. You take a deep breath, trying to steady yourself. Welcome to the afterlife, dear bride. The journey has only just begun. Even as you steel yourself for your phantom matrimony, your mind drifts to the ghost stories that haunted your childhood. In a world lit by flickering lanterns and ancestral shrines, those stories never felt like mere fiction. They were warnings. You grew up knowing that the line between the living and the dead was thin, especially for those poor souls who departed unwed. Everyone in the village had heard a tale or two of an unhappy ghost roaming, because they had no spouse to keep them company in the hereafter. Your own grandmother used to whisper one such tale as you huddled by the kitchen hearth, the story of her eldest sister, who died young and single. She never married, so she never left home, grandmother said, eyes wide. Even after we buried her, we could hear her at night, the tap-tap of her shoes in the attic, the sobs of a lonely spirit. The family tried everything, prayers, offerings, burning paper money, but nothing calmed her. Not until they arranged a makeshift marriage for her in the spirit world did the disturbances finally cease. Grandmother's wrinkled hands would tremble as she described the ghostly wedding they held. A simple ceremony by her sister's graveside, burying a tablet with the name of a young man who had also died single. After that, she said, my sister's spirit stopped crying. That cautionary tale sank deep into your bones. Unmarried dead do not rest. That was the lesson. In Chinese belief, a soul that isn't properly settled can become a dangerous thing. According to Confucian tradition, a person who dies with their social affairs in order, married with children to remember them, will be honored as an ancestor, joining the ranks of the family's guiding spirits. They receive a spirit tablet on the household altar and regular offerings of incense, food, and joss paper. In death, they become benevolent guardians, content in the knowledge that their lineage continues. But woe to those who die in an incomplete state. Without the proper rights and family status, a soul might be denied ancestor status and left to languish as a ghost. And ghosts, unlike honored ancestors, are hungry, restless, and potentially vengeful. This is especially true for women. In the strict patriarchal society of Qing China, a woman's spiritual well-being in the afterlife depends on her marital status. Only as someone's wife, part of a husband's lineage, can a woman hope to be enshrined on an ancestor altar. If she dies unmarried, she essentially has no rightful altar to call home. Her own family cannot place her spirit tablet alongside those of generations of fathers and grandfathers. Doing so, some say, would invite the wrath of the patriarchal ancestors. An unmarried woman's spirit is an outsider, a stranger at the family altar. Thus, an unmarried daughter in death becomes a homeless ghost, barred from the very rituals that would placate her soul. It's a tragic spiritual limbo. No descendants will sweep her tomb during Qingming festival. No one will burn incense for her on auspicious days. In life, she was a spinster. In death, she is a forlorn spirit. The stigma of an unwed daughter weighs heavily on the living, too. Your parents have felt it keenly. The sideways glances from neighbors, the murmurs that a girl your age should have been married by now. In their eyes and the eyes of society, an unmarried woman is a failure of filial duty. She brings shame by not fulfilling her role to marry and bear sons. This shame doesn't magically disappear if the daughter dies. If anything, it intensifies. Imagine the humiliation and heartbreak of arranging a funeral for a daughter decked not in a bride's red, but a maiden's pale burial garb. It's said such a funeral feels incomplete. No husband beside her coffin, no in-laws to pay respects. Just like that, a branch of the family tree withers with no new buds. From a spiritual perspective, this outcome is dire. The Chinese cosmos is a family-centric one. Every person is a link between past and future generations. Dying without fulfilling your link in the chain is thought to disturb the cosmic harmony. The ancestors frown at the disruption. The living descendants worry about ghostly repercussions. And so, for generations, families have gone to extraordinary lengths to prevent anyone, male or female, from departing single. If a son died too young to marry, his parents would scramble to find him a ghost bride so he wouldn't journey into the beyond alone. Even a younger brother's wedding might be delayed until his deceased elder brother was ritually wed first. Such was the insistence on preserving birth order even in death. If a daughter died unwed, her family might quietly negotiate to marry her spirit to a departed bachelor, slotting her into another family's ancestral line so she wouldn't wander eternity as a hungry ghost. These arrangements were a kind of spiritual insurance, ensuring that no soul who passed on remained partnerless and angry. In fact, ghost marriage has an ancient pedigree. Some scholars think it replaced the even more ghastly custom of burying live people to accompany the dead during China's Shang dynasty. Instead of sacrificing a living servant or concubine, later generations found it more humane to marry the deceased to a symbolic partner after death. By the time of the Han dynasty, The practice was well established. The warlord Chow Chow famously arranged a ghost marriage for his beloved teenage son, marrying the boy in absentia to a girl so that he wouldn't enter the afterlife alone. With such precedents set at the highest levels of society, it's no wonder the tradition trickled down through the ages. Some of these beliefs are fueled by fear of what a dissatisfied ghost might do. A ghost in Chinese folklore isn't a polite, wispy apparition. It's a tangible force that can wreak havoc on the living when provoked. You've heard elders attribute all manner of misfortunes to restless spirits, unexplained illnesses, sudden accidents, even droughts or floods hitting the village. Ghosts with families are less likely to cause trouble, the wise man once proclaimed after a string of bad luck, stroking his white beard. It's the lonely ones you have to watch out for. A spirit who feels cheated by an early death or by neglect might lash out at those who still draw breath. But give that ghost a proper place in the social order, say by finding him a wife, and he becomes just another ancestor to be placated with annual offerings. Every year during the 7th lunar month, the ghost month, your community takes no chances. As twilight falls, people light bundles of bamboo paper and offer food at the roadside for the Good Brothers, a polite name for ghosts. In the courtyards, flames dance as families burn joss paper money and paper houses for ancestors and restless spirits alike. The crackling of the fire and the scent of burning paper are omnipresent. It's a massive effort to feed and enrich the dead in their world, so they stay satisfied and don't roam hungrily in ours. Watching a neighbor girl crouch to burn paper offerings, you recall thinking that even in death, societal expectations continue. Ghosts are expected to stay in their lane, and the living will bribe them to ensure they do. Better to spend a little money on paper mansions and banquets for the dead than to face a furious phantom in your bedroom at midnight. In your village, hardly anyone questions these rituals. They're woven into the fabric of everyday life. By the time you could walk, you were taught to pay respects to ancestors, to never speak ill of the dead, and to avoid lonely places at night where wandering souls might lurk. Do you remember creeping past the old elm tree at the end of the lane? Folks said an unwed soldier who died in a far-off war haunted that spot. Supposedly, his spirit returned to find his childhood sweetheart married another. Bitter and alone, he lingered under that elm, making the air turn cold for anyone who passed. You used to run by with your friends, holding your breath, half laughing and half terrified, daring each other to peek over your shoulder to see if a shadow followed. Of course, you never saw anything, but that didn't stop the nightmares of a lonely soldier ghost reaching out to grab your arm. Chinese literature, too, is filled with hungry ghosts longing for what they lacked in life. In Pu Songling's famous Qing-era tales, for instance, the spirit of Nie Xiaoqian, a beautiful young woman who died unmarried, lingers in our world, seducing a living scholar, her love turning dangerous and tragic. These stories served as both entertainment and caution, reinforcing the idea that an unmarried soul, especially a woman's, could become a perilous ghost driven by yearning. When fear of the dead grips a community, it finds resolution in tradition. Ghost marriages are one such tradition, an answer to the prayers of frightened families. They address not only the sadness of a life cut short, but also the dread of a ghost unappeased. By finding a ghost a spouse, the living give that spirit what it supposedly wants: companionship and social status in the afterlife. A married ghost is no longer a threat. He or she is part of a family again, bound by the same cosmic order that governs the living. In a way, it's seen as an act of compassion as much as necessity. You are saving someone's soul from loneliness, and simultaneously, you're saving the living from that soul's wrath. It's a win-win, at least according to local wisdom. So, here you stand, about to become a ghost's wife, and though your heart quails, you understand why. All your life you've been taught that harmony in the family keeps the world in balance, and that harmony extends to the unseen world of spirits. The unmarried dead must be brought into the fold, given what they lack so they won't disturb the peace. Tonight, that duty falls on you. To refuse would be to invite disgrace upon your family and possibly disaster upon both families. You can almost hear the whispers of the ancestors in the rustling of the night breeze. Do what must be done. After all, would you rather have a living husband or a haunting? Fate has made the choice for you, and you've made your uneasy peace with it. With a final prayer to any benevolent spirit listening, you prepare to face the darkness and lead a ghost into the light of matrimonial harmony. It all started with a knock on the door. You remember that day in painfully sharp detail. The afternoon sun slanted through the lattice windows as your mother opened the door to find the village matchmaker standing there, twisting her silk handkerchief nervously. This woman had arranged countless marriages, but even she seemed uneasy about the proposal she carried. Over tea, with forced cheer, she explained the situation. The Lee family's son was gone, but his spirit longed for a bride. Would your parents consider a union between you and the departed young man? You recall choking on your rice when you overheard this from the next room. It sounded absurd. No, impossible. But the matchmaker's tone was earnest. This was no joke. It was a genuine marriage proposal from beyond the grave. In the days that followed, negotiations unfolded much like they would for any marriage, with a few ghastly twists. The matchmaker shuttled between your family and the Lees, relaying terms and reassurances. Normally, she might compare astrological birth charts to ensure you and a prospective groom were compatible. This time, she consulted a different source. A local Taoist priest known for spirit medium sessions. Through him, the Lee's deceased son allegedly spoke, confirming that yes, he approved of you as his bride. Under the trance of burning incense and talismanic incantations, the medium convulsed and spoke in a voice not entirely his own, delivering messages from the beyond. Skeptics might smirk, but in your village no one dared doubt a spirit medium's words. If he said the ghost groom chose you, then chosen you were. Who could really dispute the matchmaker relaying the groom's own opinion? It's not as if anyone else could verify the wishes of the dead. They settled on a bride price, the traditional payment from groom's family to brides. The lease offered a sum of silver, and even promised that you would always have a roof over your head under their care. In fact, some whispered that the lease might gift you a small house of your own as part of the deal, an uncommon but not unheard of gesture to sweeten such a peculiar arrangement. After all, asking a living girl to marry a ghost is a tall order. The least they could do was be generous. Your parents, in turn, agreed to send along a modest dowry. It wasn't like they'd need to provide you with furniture or cookware for setting up a new home with a living husband. Instead, your dowry chest contained simpler things, some of your clothing, a few pieces of jewelry, for you to wear now and perhaps to join you in the grave when your time comes, and ceremonial items like a pair of red candles and incense. There was also the matter of a spirit tablet, a wooden plaque inscribed with the departed groom's name, which would be used in the ceremony and later kept by your side as a stand-in for your husband in daily life. One sticky point in the talks was your future and honor. In a normal marriage, everyone expects a bride to eventually produce children. Here, that was clearly impossible. Your groom's childlessness was a fixed condition of his death. To address this, the matchmaker brought up a plan. After the wedding, you could adopt a son in the name of your deceased husband, perhaps a baby from the Lee family's relatives, to carry on the Lee lineage. This way, the ghost marriage wouldn't extinguish the family line. You would effectively become the mother of that heir, raising him as your own, ensuring the bloodline and ancestor worship for the Lees continued uninterrupted. It was a practical solution to an eerie problem, and it seemed to satisfy both families' concerns. Throughout these negotiations, you felt like a bystander to your own destiny. In keeping with custom, your feelings on the matter were scarcely solicited. A dutiful daughter doesn't protest her parents' arrangements, even when the groom in question resides under 6 feet of dirt. When the matchmaker finally turned her attention to you directly, it was to offer a few words of comfort and instruction. She tutted sympathetically at your pale face and trembling hands, then assured you that you'd be well taken care of. "You'll be like a daughter to the Lee family," she cooed. "A widow right away, yes, but still a wife in name. They'll treat you with respect." She even joked lightly. "At least you'll never suffer a quarrel with your husband." Hard to argue with a man who can't talk back, after all. You managed a weak smile at that. Gallows humor, perhaps, but humor nonetheless. Not all ghost marriage arrangements are so polite. The matchmaker didn't mention it outright, but everyone knows of unsavory corners of this practice. Rumors swirl of families so desperate to find a ghost bride or groom that they resort to trickery or crime. There's the old tale of leaving a red bridal envelope by the roadside as bait. A passerby bends to pick up the money-filled pouch, only for hidden onlookers to leap out and declare them engaged to their dead relative on the spot. Imagine walking home and inadvertently accepting a proposal from a ghost. It sounds absurd, but such stories persist, a testament to how far people will go to secure a spouse for the deceased. And darker still are the stories of body snatchers, scavengers who dig up fresh graves to steal corpses for ghost weddings. In hushed voices, villagers speak of shadowy networks where a pretty young woman's remains can fetch a hefty price from grieving parents of a dead bachelor. It's a ghoulish black market, one the imperial authorities would punish severely if discovered, and which modern authorities have outlawed entirely. Sometimes these crimes have gruesome twists. One story tells of a woman's corpse in a nearby province that was married into a family, then stolen from her grave and sold to another family for a second ghost wedding. A corpse bride with 2 different husbands, her body traded like a macabre commodity. Thankfully, nothing so extreme touched your arrangement. The Lees wanted a living bride, not a pilfered cadaver. And your family, though reluctant, gave their genuine daughter, not out of greed or force, but because tradition demanded it, and honor allowed no alternative. Still, in those early discussions, you couldn't help feeling like a commodity of sorts, a living girl being traded to placate a ghost. It was as if you straddled both worlds, not fully belonging to either. The matchmaker had fussed about mundane details with your mother. The wedding date, chosen in consultation with a lunar calendar, and the priest for an auspicious time. The wedding garments, you would still wear the customary red bridal chipao, while the groom's coffin would be draped in red silk, and the ceremony outline. Interestingly, many of the usual marriage preliminaries were skipped. There was no elaborate engagement ceremony, no exchange of betrothal gifts beyond the bride price. No one sent pieces of wedding cake to relatives to announce the match, as would happen with a normal engagement. Discretion was key. This was not the kind of wedding one shouted from the rooftops. The invitations, if one could call them that, were limited to immediate family and a few necessary figures like the priest and matchmaker. In total, fewer than a dozen living souls would witness the moment you were bound to a soul from beyond. Behind the scenes, however, the spirit market was quietly active. The priest made a tidy sum selling the Lees special funerary tablets and talismans to ensure their son's spirit would accept the marriage peacefully. The paper craftsman in town received an order for extraordinary goods, paper servants, paper gold ingots, and even a paper sedan chair, all to be burned as offerings during the wedding and funeral, a two-in-one event in this case. The seamstress refitted a set of burial clothes for the groom, tailoring them as if for a lavish wedding, knowing full well they'd never be worn by a moving body. And the butcher no doubt anticipated a nice order for pork and chicken to feed the small wedding banquet. In its own morbid way, an economy swirled around your ghost marriage. Dying unmarried, it turns out, can be expensive. The day the agreement was finalized, the matchmaker brought over a red envelope to your parents. Inside was the agreed bride price coin and a document to formalize the ghost marriage arrangement. You peeked as your father opened it. There, written in careful calligraphy on yellowed paper, were your name and the name of your departed intended, linked in traditional phrasing as husband and wife. It looked like any regular marriage contract, save for one detail. Beside the groom's name, someone had drawn a small black cross to denote his deceased status. It made your stomach drop, that little mark. A contract with a cross, sealing you to the other side. With a deep bow, your father pressed his seal to the paper, as did the Lee patriarch. The deal was done. That night, as you lay in bed, you felt a strange mix of resignation and unreality. Through the paper-thin walls, you heard your parents speaking in low tones. They sounded relieved, like a great burden had been lifted. The matchmaker had assured them that by doing this, both families would earn the quiet admiration of the community for upholding tradition and ensuring peace for a troubled spirit. In a way, you realized, you had already ceased to belong entirely to the world of the living. You were caught in a transaction between the living and the dead. The ghost match was made, and the spirit markets had done their work. All that remained now was to go through with the rites and truly become the bride of a ghost. The wedding. Rituals and real horror. The wedding night arrives shrouded in an uncanny hush. In front of the Lee family home, a small gathering assembles under the pale glow of hanging lanterns. You stand at the threshold in your crimson bridal gown, face hidden behind a red silk veil. Beneath that veil, your eyes dart nervously. You take in the scene through the fabric. The courtyard is decorated for celebration, yet tinged with funeral gravity. Red banners hang alongside white paper streamers of mourning. A band of musicians is absent. No cheerful wedding drums or flutes tonight, only the soft crackle of incense sticks and the occasional pop of a single firecracker to ward off ill spirits. The air is thick with incense and the faint iron scent of recently disturbed earth. At the center of the courtyard lies the groom's coffin, elevated on two carved stands and draped in rich red cloth embroidered with phoenixes and dragons. It's an eerie inversion of a bridal sedan chair. Normally, a groom would stand by your side to greet the guests. Tonight, that polished wooden box is both his presence and his absence. Leaning against the coffin is a wooden spirit tablet bearing his name in bold strokes of ink. That tablet is essentially your groom's voice in the ceremony, his proxy representing his soul. And, as if that weren't enough, the Lee family has also placed a white rooster atop the coffin's lid, tethered gently by a red string. The bird ruffles its feathers and lets out a sudden crow, causing you to jump. According to custom, a white cock will serve as the stand-in for a deceased groom during the rites. The belief is that the rooster's yang energy, the energy of life and masculinity, can symbolically complete the union with the bride's yin. So, tonight, you effectively have two stand-ins, a wooden tablet and a living rooster. It's almost comical, until another glance at that coffin reminds you this is deadly serious. The priest, dressed in flowing robes and a cap adorned with Taoist talismans, clears his throat and begins the ceremony. In a traditional wedding, you and your groom would bow to heaven and earth, to your ancestors, and to each other. So too in this ghost wedding. At the priest's signal, you turn toward the sky. Through your veil, you see the faint shimmer of stars. You and the Lee parents together execute the first bow, bending low to honor Tian-di, heaven and earth, as witnesses to this union. Next comes the second bow to the ancestors. Normally, a new couple would bow to the groom's ancestors, but here you bow toward the Lee family's ancestral shrine, and also toward your own parents, symbolically including all forebears in the moment. Finally, the third bow. Your heart pounds wildly as you turn to face the coffin, your husband. Beside you, the helpful matchmaker gently tugs your sleeve, guiding you to stand in the proper position. You and the rooster, still perched on the coffin, are now face to face. The priest intones a blessing, and you shakily lower yourself into a deep bow toward the coffin and the tablet resting atop it. In that moment, you feel a strange certainty that somewhere, somehow, the groom's spirit is bowing back. Husband and wife, paying respects to one another as tradition dictates. A tear slips down your cheek beneath the veil, whether from sadness, fear, or simply the overwhelming strangeness, you cannot say. With the bows completed, the priest signals the exchange of tokens. There are no rings in a Qing wedding, but there is usually an exchange of gifts. One of the groom's relatives steps forward and places a piece of red silk in your hands. Wrapped inside it is a jade bracelet, a family heirloom meant for the eldest son's wife. You accept it with a deep nod. Normally, you would now present a gift to your husband. In lieu of that, you gently drape a second red silk cloth over the rooster and the spirit tablet. It's an awkward attempt at symbolism. You sharing your wedding veil with your groom. The rooster clucks quietly under the fabric, its silhouette bobbing. The witnesses murmur approval. This simple act signifies that you have accepted the groom's family's gifts, and in return, you offer yourself, veiled in red, to the deceased man. The priest then leads you in an oath. Kneeling before the coffin, you place incense in the burner and press your forehead to the ground. You swear to uphold your duties as a wife, to honor the ancestors, to care for your new family, and, notably, to remain faithful to your husband's memory for the rest of your days. I pledge chastity and devotion, you declare softly, the words catching in your throat. Thus, at the very moment of becoming a wife, you vow to live out your days as a widow. Beside you, the Lee family's elderly matriarch sniffs and dabs her eyes with a handkerchief. It's hard to tell if her tears are of sorrow for her lost son, or relief that his spirit will now have a companion, and her family honor is restored. Likely both. Your own mother, standing in the corner, stifles a sob behind her sleeve. For her, this scene is agonizing and consoling all at once. She is watching her daughter get married, as tradition demanded, but to a fate no mother would envy. With your vow sworn, the priest proclaims the marriage sealed. A red ribbon is brought forth and ceremonially looped around you and the coffin's end, binding bride and groom together. The rooster, perhaps sensing its job is done, gives one last emphatic crow, as if to announce the climax of the ceremony. A few nervous chuckles ripple through the gathering at the rooster's timing. The tension breaks for just a moment. Even the priest cracks a tiny smile before quickly resuming his stoic expression. Now comes a part that in any other wedding would be pure joy. The banquet. The Lee family ushers everyone to the tables set along the courtyard's edge. By custom, the newlyweds would sit at the head table. In this case, the head table has one red, silk-draped chair for the bride, and next to it, a dark wooden tablet standing upright on the seat of another chair, representing the groom. They have literally set a place for the dead. It is a disquieting sight, but no one remarks on it. You delicately lift your veil at last. It's acceptable now that the vows are over, and take your seat. The night air is cool on your tear-stained face. A pair of attendants, themselves close family members, bring out steaming dishes, longevity noodles, dumplings, rice wine. The smell of ginger and pork wafts by, normally an aroma that would make your stomach rumble. Tonight, your appetite has vanished. Still, you perform the expected rituals. You pick up a cup of rice wine and turn to your side. With both hands, you raise the cup and pour its contents onto the ground in front of the empty chair beside you. A libation for your absent groom. "To my husband," you manage to say, voice trembling. The clear liquid soaks into the earth. The Lee patriarch returns the toast, lifting his cup toward the heavens. "To the bride and groom, may they find unity in this life and the next." The assembled guests drink in silence. The clink of cups and bowls is subdued, nothing like the raucous toasting that rings out at ordinary weddings. By the faint light of the lanterns, you catch glimpses of expressions around you, solemn, pitying, thoughtful. It's as if none of them are quite sure how to behave at this bizarre feast. Are they celebrating? Mourning? Both? The lines blur. After a few courses, the priest quietly announces it is time for the final rite. The hour of the rat, midnight, has arrived. appropriately mystical for sending the groom to his resting place with his new bride's presence formally acknowledged. The men move with efficient purpose now. A pair of strong cousins lift the coffin from its stands, removing the rooster, which is promptly handed off and taken away, perhaps spared as a cherished odd memento, or perhaps destined for tomorrow's soup. One can't be sure. The red cloth is adjusted so it still covers the coffin like a regal mantle. By custom, a wife should accompany her husband to the threshold of his home when he leaves. In death, that means accompanying his body to the grave. So you rise and follow as the small procession moves out of the courtyard towards the family burial plot behind the house. You clutch the groom's spirit tablet to your chest with both hands as if it were a precious newborn. In a sense, it is now your most precious charge. The Lee parents walk beside you, each resting a hand on your shoulders for support, or perhaps to support themselves. Under an ancient oak where the family tombstones stand, a fresh grave has been dug next to the groom's ancestors. The night is eerily quiet, save for the soft shuffling of feet and the distant chirr of cicadas. Lantern light bobs, stretching your shadows among the gravestones as if the spirits themselves were marching alongside you. The coffin is lowered with ropes into the earth. At the grave's edge, you almost expect to feel a spectral hand in yours, guiding you, but there's only the cold night air. The red shroud covering the coffin is the last thing to disappear into the darkness of the pit. In accordance with the ritual, you step forward one last time. Your veil is off, your eyes red from tears. You take a strip of white cloth, the symbol of mourning, and gently tie it around your forehead. The transformation feels physical, as if the cloth around your forehead weighs a ton and drains the remaining color from your world. In that instant, you transform from a bride in red to a widow in white. With a wail that you didn't know you had in you, you cry out, addressing your husband's name into the night sky. This is the start of the morning cry, a final goodbye and a first lament. The sound echoes across the quiet fields, genuine anguish mixed with ritual protocol. The groom's mother joins in, and soon the two of you are keening in tandem over the open grave, 2 generations of women united in grief for the same man. One his mother, one his bride. The men begin shoveling soil, covering the coffin gradually, then faster, until with a thud and a cascade of dirt, the grave is filled. The priest lights bundles of joss paper and tosses them into a bonfire by the graveside. The orange flames leap up, illuminating the strain and relief on everyone's faces. Into that fire go also the paper effigies prepared for this night. Paper servants, paper furniture, even the paper sedan chair that was symbolically used earlier to carry the couple. In a poignant touch, the Lai family had also commissioned a paper bride, a doll-like effigy dressed in red bridal finery. It had stood silently next to the coffin through the ceremony, representing the spiritual form of you. Now, the priest takes that paper bride and places it gently atop the funeral pyre. You watch in fascination and horror as the effigy's painted face curls and blackens in the heat before crumpling into ashes. The crackling flames cast dancing shadows, making it seem for a moment as if the paper servants are alive, bowing and swaying in the heat before they crumble. All these paper offerings are meant to be sent to the spirit world, ensuring the groom, and symbolically a part of you, have everything needed in the afterlife. The flames devour the replicas of a life the two of you will never physically share, but which tradition insists on providing anyway. And just like that, it is finished. The priest chants final prayers, asking the ancestors to welcome the groom and acknowledge you as one of their own by marriage. The smell of burnt paper and incense hangs heavy in the air. One by one, the attendees bow to the newly covered grave. The Lee family, with gentle dignity, approaches you. Your father-in-law takes your hand and addresses you as daughter. Your mother-in-law, eyes wet, manages a small smile and nod. In that moment, the two families formally recognize each other as relatives, in-laws bound by a most unusual wedding. By custom, you are now a Lee. You have a husband, though he lies in the earth, and you have a new family among the living. The living and the dead have been tied together with a red string and a prayer. The horror of the night is over, and as the first light of dawn peeks over the horizon, you stand as a bride who is also already a widow. The marriage is complete. What comes next is a lifetime of dawns without a groom by your side. The hardest part, you realize, is just beginning. The sun rises on your first morning as a married woman and a widow. The events of the night feel like a fever dream, but the red bridal dress carefully folded on a stool and the incense lingering in your hair remind you that it was all real. You awaken on a wooden bed in the Lee family house, in what used to be your husband's childhood room. It has, in effect, become your room now. His straw-stuffed mattress is now your bed. His neatly stacked books of Confucian classics on the shelf are now your nightly reading. In the corner, propped on a small altar table, is the memorial tablet with his name, the very one you carried last night. It rests beside a new plaque bearing your own name, marking you as his wife. 2 sticks of incense, lit by your mother-in-law at dawn, curl smoke around these twin tablets. Husband and wife side by side on the altar, as if death were just a minor paperwork issue in the bureaucracy of the afterlife. Your mother-in-law gently calls you by your new title, daughter. It startles you for a second. You have been someone's daughter all your life, but now whose daughter you are has shifted. You quickly rise, smoothing your simple cotton tunic. The elaborate bridal finery is put away. Today you wear plain, dark clothing appropriate for a widow in her first mourning period. You follow your mother-in-law to the family altar in the main hall. There, you perform your first duty as a ghost wife, offering morning incense to your husband's spirit. Kneeling, you hold a lit joss stick between your palms and bow 3 times to the lacquered ancestral shrine. His spirit tablet stands among those of long-departed Lees. He has been formally installed as an ancestor now, thanks to the ghost marriage. And as his bride, you too will be expected to tend to him at this altar for as long as you live. This is your new rhythm. At dawn and dusk, you will light incense and speak a few words to a wooden name slip that represents the man you married. It's a strangely intimate routine. In these moments you whisper to him about your hopes that he's at peace, about mundane household news, anything at all, and imagine that somewhere he hears you. It's not exactly the companionship one dreams of in marriage, but it is the only form of companionship available to you now. Life as a ghost widow is at once simpler and more complicated than that of a normal bride. In practical terms, you will never have a living husband's needs to attend to. There's no one to cook special meals for on his birthday, no clothes of his to wash, no children born from your union to raise, aside from the adopted heir that will eventually come into your care. Yet, you must care for his memory and honor. You maintain his shrine, you keep his grave swept and clean, and you dutifully carry out rites on his behalf, the seasonal offerings of food and spirit money at his tomb, the prayers during the ghost festival to ensure he has comfort in the other world. In essence, you are a wife to a spirit. It's a role that demands both piety and a peculiar sort of imaginative devotion. Where other wives might chat with their husbands over dinner, you set an extra place at mealtimes with a small portion of rice in front of his tablet. Your father-in-law notices one evening and nods approvingly, a sign that you are properly acknowledging your husband's unseen presence at the family table. The household chores occupy your days and, in many ways, shield you from dwelling too much on your unusual plight. You fetch water from the well, you help your mother-in-law in the kitchen, you mend clothing, you tend the garden. From the outside, you might seem like any dutiful daughter-in-law, and the Lee family does treat you kindly, as one of their own. Your mother-in-law shares stories of her son's childhood with you, as though trying to fill in the blanks of the man you never got to know in life. Your father-in-law instructs you on the Lee clan's traditions, teaching you the history of your new ancestors. It's not lost on you that many a mother-in-law might be less kind to a living daughter-in-law competing for her son's attention. But here, tragically, you're all on the same side, united by love for a ghost. In all these ways, they fold you gently into the fabric of their family. It is a consolation. You gained a family even as you lost the future you might have imagined. The villagers, too, come to accept your new status. When you walk through the market street, they address you with a certain deference. There goes the Lee widow, a devoted girl. Some even look at you with a touch of awe or pity, as if you've done something heroic by marrying a ghost. In their eyes, you sacrificed your personal life to uphold duty and harmony for both families and the spirit of your husband. This earns you a measure of respect. No one calls you a spinster anymore. Instead, they call you virtuous. Indeed, society heaps silent praise on ghost widows like you. Local gossip recounts how the village elder compared you to a legendary widow who wed a dead hero and lived in chastity ever after, a paragon of loyalty. You've even heard whispers that the county magistrate might one day grant your in-laws a memorial archway, celebrating your chastity and devotion to your deceased husband. Such honors are not unheard of for women who remain faithful in widowhood. The thought leaves you with conflicted feelings. An honorary arch won't keep you warm at night, but it means the society that demanded this sacrifice at least acknowledges it. In imperial times, the government sometimes honored steadfast widows by erecting chastity memorial arches in their villages to commend them for not remarrying. You might one day walk under such an arch built in your name, a bittersweet honor marking a life of sacrifice. And what of your own heart? That is a more complicated matter. You are young, you have eyes and a heart like anyone else. Sometimes you catch yourself envying the village girls who gossip about their husbands or blush at the flirtations of a market boy. That path is closed to you now. By binding yourself to a ghost, you have, in a sense, renounced earthly romance. A lifetime of celibacy stretches ahead, enforced by both your vow and social expectations. You would never dare so much as to smile too warmly at an unattached man. Even the hint of impropriety could ruin the hard-won respect you have. So you tamp down those natural feelings. When wistful thoughts surface, wondering what it would be like to have a living hand to hold, a voice to murmur your name in the dark, you banish them by remembering the alternative. If you hadn't agreed to this marriage, you might have been haunted by the very spirit who is now your silent companion. Better a ghost as a husband than a ghost as a tormentor, so the saying goes. A grim little joke that occasionally passes among young women in your village. On certain nights, though, in the deepest hours when even the crickets sleep, you allow yourself to speak freely into the darkness of your room. You sit before the little shrine with your husband's tablet, the only light coming from a small oil lamp, and you talk. You tell him about the day, how the rice harvest is coming in well this season, how his mother laughed today, remembering the time he fell into the pig pen as a toddler. You confess your loneliness, how you miss your own parents, but also worry about leaving his parents alone in their grief. In these unguarded moments, you pour your heart out to the quiet tablet of wood. It cannot answer, but in the stillness after your voice fades, sometimes a lamp flickers oddly, or a night breeze rustles the eaves. You like to imagine it's him, the ghost of your husband, listening, and perhaps even trying to respond in the subtle language of the other world. It's a comforting fantasy. At first, sleep in that room came fitfully. The first few nights you jolted awake, certain you felt the mattress shift as if someone sat beside you. Once you thought you heard a whisper. Just the wind, you told yourself, heart pounding. These terrors eased as weeks passed, familiarity and exhaustion dulling them. Over time, you find a semblance of peace in this routine. Human beings are adaptable, after all. The shock and horror of that wedding night turn into the dull ache of everyday life. Months pass. Seasons turn. You perform the Qingming tomb-sweeping ritual for your husband in spring, trimming the weeds around his grave and burning fresh offerings. In summer, you help repair the roof of the Lee house, knowing that one day this home will pass to the adopted son who will inherit the family name. A child who will call you mother, even though he is not of your blood. The Lees are already in talks with a cousin to adopt a baby boy, born just after your husband died. When the time is right, that boy will be brought into the family and raised as yours and your husband's posthumous son. In autumn, you prepare the spirit goods for the Hungry Ghost Festival, feeling oddly content that your husband's ghost will not be among the wandering, hungry ones. He has you and the family to care for him, so his spirit is considered at peace. That thought gives you purpose. Through your role, you have tamed what could have been a menacing, restless ghost, and turned him into another beloved ancestor. The restless night howls and mysterious misfortunes that people feared have not materialized. Life in the village goes on, undisturbed by the young man's ghost, and many credit your marriage for that tranquility. When the adopted child arrives, a chubby-cheeked little boy from a related branch of the Lee clan, you pour into him all the love and care that you might have given to your own. In your heart, you know he can never replace what you lost, but when he toddles over and calls you mother for the first time, something in you heals. In the laughter of that little boy as you chase him around the courtyard, you find a brightness that had long been missing. Though he technically carries your husband's name and lineage, in day-to-day life he becomes your solace. a living connection that pulls you back firmly into the land of the living. From time to time, you visit your own parents in your natal village. Those visits are polite and a bit heart-wrenching. By tradition, once married, a woman belongs fully to her husband's family. And in your case, that is true even though your husband isn't alive. You can see the sadness in your mother's eyes when she looks at you, the unspoken apology that she let this fate befall you. You always smile and reassure her that you are treated well and have accepted your path. In some ways, you insist, it's not so bad. You have the protection of a family. You will not know the sorrows of a difficult marriage to an incompatible man. And you believe you've done a good thing, a filial thing. She nods and praises your filial piety, calling you a good girl, but that shadow of regret never leaves her face. When you depart back to the Lai home, she presses a small package into your hand. Inside are some pastries and a pair of warm socks she sewed for you, small tokens of ongoing maternal love. You hug her tightly, and for a moment you are just a daughter leaving home again. Tears on both sides. In the quiet of your new home, you have moments of reflection. Is this truly the life meant for you? In the grand scheme of things, your sacrifice ensured that a family's patrilineal order and spiritual harmony were maintained. Younger siblings could marry without fear of cursing the family, knowing the eldest brother was married first, as tradition dictates. The spirit of a young man was given solace, woven into the family through you, rather than left to roam in anger or sorrow. The balance between the worlds of the living and dead in your little community was, at least for now, set right. These thoughts give you comfort on days when your own balance feels precarious. You remind yourself that your role is considered a caring and humane one at its core. Ghost marriage is, bizarrely, about compassion. By being a ghost's bride, you relieved an anguished soul, and in doing so also relieved the anxieties of the living family that loved him. In the logic of your culture, you transformed something frightening, a lonely ghost, into something hopeful, an honored ancestor, through devotion and ritual. That night, as you finally drift into an exhausted sleep in the Lee family home, dreams take you. You find yourself standing once more in the courtyard, but everything is strangely transformed. The lanterns blaze brighter. The night sky is an impossible crimson. Before you stands your husband, not as a corpse or effigy, but alive and smiling gently. He wears the same red silk, yet his face is warm, eyes bright. In this dream, he takes your hand. You feel solidity, warmth. The sensation startles you and tears well in your eyes. "Thank you," he whispers, though his lips never move. The voice seems to come from all around, echoing softly. You want to speak, to ask him if he's happy, if he truly chose you, but your voice in the dream is muffled, like speaking underwater. Instead, he leads you forward. Suddenly, you are at a banquet table laden with food, much grander than the simple feast that actually took place. Ghostly figures, transparent people, some you recognize from ancestral portraits, others strangers, sit around, raising cups in a silent toast. At the head of the table, your husband pulls out a chair for you. When you sit, it's like sinking into cotton. A feeling of peace radiates through you. Then the scene shifts. You are in a bedroom, a bridal chamber, red curtains all around. Your husband stands at the doorway, but as you reach out, he recedes, as if walking backwards into a fog. The more you chase, the further he drifts away. Panic rises. You call his name. In the dream you somehow know it, though in reality you had only heard it a few times. He pauses, just a silhouette now, and whispers, "Do not be afraid." You awaken with a start. The gray morning light filters through the lattice window. Your hand is outstretched to empty air. The room is still. Only the faint scent of ashes and the hardness of the wooden pillow under your neck remind you where you are. You lie there a moment, the dream already dissolving like mist, leaving only an impression of calm where fear used to be. Perhaps you dare to think it was his way of saying it will be all right. Or perhaps it was just your mind comforting itself. Either way, you accept it. The years ahead will likely follow this pattern. One day you will take your place among the ancestors as well, and when that time comes, you believe your husband's spirit will be there to greet you, perhaps grateful for all you did. For now, you live one day at a time. You have a family to care for, and they care for you. You have a memory to keep alive, and in return, that memory keeps you going. It is not the life you dreamed of as a little girl, but it is the life destiny dealt you, and you have embraced it as best you can. After the vows, after the tears, this is your world, part hearth and home, part whisper and shadow, a foot in the land of the living, a heart in the realm of spirits. The ghost marriage bound you to death, but paradoxically, it has also given you a reason to live, to be the bridge between yesterday and tomorrow, between a lost son and the family that still breathes. In that bridging, you manage to find meaning, and perhaps even a quiet form of happiness. Not everyone through history accepted ghost marriage with quiet resignation. For every obedient spirit bride like yourself, whispers persist of those who rebelled against this eerie fate. In hushed family anecdotes or local legends, there are tales of defiance. The young woman who slipped out of her parents' house under the cover of darkness to escape a planned ghost wedding, never to return. Or the heartbroken girl who, rather than be given to a corpse, swallowed opium-laced wine on the eve of the ceremony. Such tragedies rarely made the official records, but lived on in the cautionary murmurs of villagers. They highlighted an uncomfortable truth. Ghost marriage, while dressed in the robes of duty and piety, could also be a form of oppression. It demanded a living person's future in exchange for appeasing the dead. Not everyone found that a fair trade. One such tale speaks of a young woman named Lan in the late 19th century. She was promised as a ghost bride to the departed son of a wealthy family, an arrangement her impoverished parents accepted in exchange for money. But Lan herself had other ideas. On the night before the wedding, as the household prepared mourning clothes and wedding joss sticks, Lan slipped out. Under the light of a waning moon, she ran to the next town. When the groom's family discovered her absence the next day, panic and scandal ensued. A search was mounted, but Lan was never found. Some say she found refuge in a distant relative's home and eventually married a living man under a false identity. Others whisper that she joined a convent, devoting her life to Buddha rather than a ghost. The truth is lost, but her story survived as a kind of folk legend, the girl who said no to a ghost. It was often told as a cautionary tale to daughters. See what extremes you might be driven to if you resist tradition. But to some, Lan's tale was quietly inspiring. It proved that, despite immense pressure, personal agency could sometimes prevail over superstition. It never escaped notice that this sacrifice was overwhelmingly expected of women, not men. A man who married a ghost bride was under no lifelong celibacy oath. He could, and usually would, take a living wife later, the ghost marriage just a footnote in his lineage. But a woman who married a ghost was effectively surrendering any chance at an ordinary married life thereafter. Society upheld this imbalance as just the way of things. This double standard demanded that women give up more in these arrangements, and over time, many came to view it as deeply unjust. Even within families that practiced ghost marriage, there were often quiet negotiations and loopholes. Some parents, deeply uneasy about sacrificing a surviving child's happiness, sought gentler alternatives. Instead of marrying their living daughter to a ghost, a family might arrange to symbolically marry their deceased son to a doe bride, a humanoid figurine molded from flour and dressed in bridal cloth. This flower bride would be buried or cremated alongside the son, fulfilling the ritual requirement without involving an actual living woman. To the superstitious, it was the thought that counted. Perhaps the ghost would accept the effigy as a stand-in spouse. Likewise, some communities held ceremonies joining the spirits of two deceased individuals, a ghost bachelor and a ghost spinster, so that both souls would be satisfied, with no living party's life disrupted. These all-ghost marriages were seen as ideal by more progressive folk. The dead get their wedding, the living are left in peace. On the flip side, ghost marriage had a dark underbelly that grew more pronounced when the custom collided with human greed and desperation. We've touched on the rumors of grave robbers and deceitful matchmakers. Unfortunately, those rumors have sometimes been all too real. In older times, such incidents might have been rare and spoken of only in veiled terms. A body disappearing from a graveyard here, a traveling marriage broker vanishing after being paid there. But as society began to frown upon ghost marriage, especially in the 20th century, a black market for it slunk deeper into the shadows. Some families, unwilling to let go of tradition but unable to find willing participants, became susceptible to truly sinister solutions. There are accounts from the late Qing and early Republican era of corpse brides being sold quietly to wealthy households. One magistrate's archive mentions intervening in a case where a funeral parlor director was caught storing the body of a young woman, intending to sell it to a family looking for a ghost wife for their dead son. The practice was officially illegal even then. Grave robbery and corpse mutilation have long been crimes. But because ghost marriage had deep cultural roots, these crimes were often hushed up to avoid scandal. Families didn't want their beloved custom tainted by talk of murder or theft. Yet, by its very nature, ghost marriage opened a door to those possibilities. Meanwhile, as China marched into the modern era, ghost marriage faced increasing criticism and attempts at eradication. By the early 20th century, reformist voices labeled it a feudal superstition. Western missionaries and progressive Chinese intellectuals alike were horrified by stories of young women trapped in marriages to dead men. In the 1920s and 1930s, as the nationalist government pushed to modernize and westernize China, such practices were officially discouraged. Urban educated circles began to treat ghost marriage as an embarrassing remnant of the old days. Families in the cities largely abandoned it. Out in the villages, though, old habits die hard. ghost marriages continued, albeit more discreetly. Then came the Communist Revolution. In 1949, Mao Zedong's new government outlawed ghost marriage explicitly, denouncing it, along with fortune-telling, feng shui, and other spiritual folk customs, as part of the old society that needed to be destroyed. China's new rulers were ardent atheists. To them, arranging marriages for invisible specters was worse than frivolous. It was counter-revolutionary nonsense. Under the weight of law and propaganda, ghost marriage in the mid-20th century retreated further underground. Yet it never entirely vanished. In some areas, people devised clever workarounds to technically comply with the law while still honoring their dead. For example, rather than holding a public ceremony, a family might perform a brief private ritual at the graveside, away from prying eyes. Or they would use the aforementioned effigies and call it a memorial service rather than a wedding. The authorities could ban the form, but not so easily the belief that fueled it. Deep down, many still thought, why let a soul suffer just because of a regulation? As long as families quietly took care of these arrangements without causing a stir, officials often turned a blind eye. In other cases, ghost marriage became a dirty little secret that entire communities colluded to hide. Perhaps the most striking aspect of ghost marriage's later years is how something born from love and fear could lead to blatant crime. The scandals that have emerged, especially in recent decades, read like horror stories. The more forbidden the practice became, the more it attracted unsavory opportunists. By the 21st century, Chinese media began reporting shocking incidents. Funeral homes selling unclaimed female corpses to ghost marriage brokers. Graveyards in rural provinces experiencing a rash of body snatchings. Even murders of vulnerable women by predators intending to sell the bodies for bride prices on the ghost marriage black market. Each headline sent shivers through the public, casting the old custom in a ghoulish new light. What was once done out of filial piety had, in these cases, turned into a profitable crime. These scandals underscore a tension that had always been there. Ghost marriage walks a knife's edge between devotion and darkness. The same tradition that provided comfort to grieving families could be twisted into exploitation. The same society that praised a girl for marrying a ghost might also condemn another for being the hapless victim of a ghost marriage scheme. As ghost marriages crept into modern times, they became fewer but, oddly, more notorious. When everyone did it, it was just part of life. Now that few do, each instance stands out like a specter under a spotlight. And so, ghost marriage, once a sacrosanct if peculiar rite, has been pushed to the fringes, practiced in secret by the steadfastly traditional or the desperately superstitious, and abused by the unscrupulous. The tales of rebellion and the tales of corruption both serve as reminders. Whenever human fear and love intermingle with the supernatural, the outcomes can be as noble or as nefarious as human nature itself. As we step forward from the past into the present, we'll see that ghost marriages, though officially suppressed, still cast a long shadow in parts of China. The afterlife weddings didn't simply disappear. They adapted, sometimes with chilling results, to the modern world. Ghost marriages today have become rare, but they have not entirely disappeared. In fact, the custom has proven hauntingly resilient, adapting to the modern world in unpredictable ways. Officially, such practices are banned, condemned by law and generally frowned upon by younger generations. Yet, in rural pockets of northern and central China, the belief that an unmarried soul needs a companion persists. And where there is belief, there are ghost marriages, sometimes carried out in secret, sometimes erupting into the public eye through scandal. One cannot talk about ghost marriages in modern times without addressing the criminal networks that have sprung up around them. As the supply of willing participants dried up, a black market filled the void, often with horrific methods. In the 2010s, Chinese media uncovered a series of macabre incidents that read like horror film plots. In one infamous case from 2015, it was reported that 14 female corpses were stolen from a single village graveyard in Shaanxi province. Tomb raiders had dug up recently buried women, intending to sell their remains as ghost brides. The revelations shocked the nation. Many urban Chinese were barely aware that ghost marriages still occurred at all, let alone that people would resort to grave robbery for it. Authorities launched crackdowns, increasing patrols in cemeteries and even installing surveillance cameras and heavy locks on tombs in some areas to deter body snatchers. Worse yet have been cases of murder. In 2016, police in Gansu province arrested a group of men who had preyed on vulnerable women, 2 with mental disabilities, and killed them, planning to sell their bodies to ghost marriage buyers. The scheme was as ruthless as it was gruesome. They saw these women as easy targets, less human in their twisted view, whose deaths they could profit from by providing a corpse to a superstitious family. In another harrowing incident that same year, a young woman in Shaanxi was drugged and buried in a coffin to be sold as a ghost bride, only to wake up underground during the burial. She began thumping frantically, and miraculously, the terrified buyers dug her up in time. She survived to testify, and the culprits were charged with attempted murder and human trafficking. These stories are the darkest extremes, of course, but they underscore how the once sacred ritual can be distorted by greed. Modern ghost marriages, when they make headlines, often carry this sinister aura of crime. Yet not all contemporary ghost marriages are tales of horror. Some are acts of poignant devotion. For instance, in 2017, a pair of families in Malaysia, home to a large ethnic Chinese community, held a ghost wedding for their children who had been sweethearts in life, but tragically died together in a car accident just before their planned nuptials. In a heartfelt ceremony, the couple's photos were placed side by side, rings were exchanged posthumously, and they were buried together as husband and wife. This story, far from being condemned, was met with an outpouring of sympathy and understanding. It showed that even today, ghost marriage can be an expression of love, a way to grant the dead the chance to fulfill their wishes, and for families to find a sense of closure. Moreover, the underlying beliefs remain surprisingly common. Surveys in some rural regions indicate that a significant minority of older villagers still consider it important to marry off an unmarried son or daughter who dies young. They fear the lonely ghost scenario as much as their ancestors did. Technology has even crept into the practice. There have been reports of people quietly networking in online forums or encrypted chat groups to find ghost marriage matches, a far cry from the old village matchmaker with her ledger, but functionally similar. On Chinese e-commerce platforms, one could, until crackdowns, find vendors selling ghost wedding kits, paper dolls, miniature coffins, and instruction booklets for performing a simplified ceremony at home. Modern problems like the skewed sex ratio, a surplus of men due to decades of one-child policy son preference, oddly intersect with this ancient rite. Families with unmarried deceased sons and not enough living women fuel a higher demand for bride remains, thus exacerbating the black market. Where there's demand, supply follows, legally or not. Even outside mainland China, ghost marriages have left their mark. In Taiwan, some families of deceased daughters have been known to place red packets containing cash, paper money, and a lock of the girl's hair or a fingernail in public places, hoping an unwitting man will pick it up, thereby volunteering to marry the ghost. If the man refuses, superstition says misfortune may follow him. In a proper ceremony, a rooster often represents the groom for such marriages. Among Chinese communities in Singapore and Malaysia, occasional ghost weddings are still quietly arranged, usually between two deceased souls, as a nod to tradition and a way to settle lingering spiritual debts. One particularly bizarre modern case involved a popular young influencer named Luo Xiao Mao Maozi, who died by suicide in 2021. Not long after her death, 3 men stole her ashes from a crematorium, intending to sell them as part of a ghost marriage arrangement. In their view, even her cremated remains had value to a family out there with a dead bachelor son. Thankfully, they were caught by police before the sale could happen. It's a chilling example of how the ghost marriage tradition can collide with contemporary life in the strangest ways. An internet celebrity's remains becoming a commodity in a centuries-old ritual. The story made international news and left many Chinese netizens outraged and incredulous that such medieval-sounding crimes were still possible in today's China. In response to these incidents, Chinese authorities have tightened enforcement. Trafficking in corpses is now heavily prosecuted, with perpetrators of related murders and grave robberies sometimes facing the death penalty or life in prison. Public awareness campaigns in rural areas explain that ghost marriages are illegal and encourage people to seek emotional closure in other ways. Scholars and media have also ramped up education, framing ghost marriage as part of a bygone era of superstition, a cultural relic to learn about, perhaps, but not to practice. As a result, open ghost marriage ceremonies are exceedingly rare today, and those that do occur are usually done under euphemisms or within the strict confines of custom. For example, wedlock between 2 deceased persons, which harms no living soul and thus tends to be ignored by authorities. Reports suggest that these occurrences are concentrated in a few regions, notably parts of Shanxi, Shanxi, Henan, and Shandong, where traditional beliefs run deep and the ghost bride black market has taken root. And yet, despite the legal and social pressures, ghost marriages still quietly happen each year. They usually leave no trace except in the memories of the families involved, unless something goes awry and draws attention. It's a testament to the deep cultural roots of this practice. For many, the fear of an angry, lonely ghost or the shame of an unmarried dead kin is stronger than fear of the law. Love and grief push people to do things that outsiders might deem irrational, like illicitly matchmaking for a person who can no longer walk this earth. In interviews, some parents have confessed that arranging a ghost marriage brought them peace. "Now I know my son has someone with him over there," one father in Shanxi told a reporter in 2014 after finding a ghost bride for his 28-year-old son who died in a car crash. "I can sleep at night." Such sentiments echo the age-old rationale that we've seen throughout this story. Ghost marriage is not exclusively Chinese either. Across cultures, humans have devised ways to wed the departed. In South Sudan, for example, a woman may marry a deceased man and then have children in his name with a proxy. A practice anthropologists note is strikingly akin to the Chinese rationale of preserving the lineage. In France, the law even permits posthumous marriages in special cases, a legal provision that allows someone to marry their deceased fiancé, usually to legitimize a child or fulfill a dying wish. And in Japan, during the 20th century, families of fallen soldiers held ceremonies to marry the dead to elaborate bride dolls, so the men's spirits would not be lonely. These parallels underscore a universal theme, a refusal to let death snuff out love and duty. But China's ghost marriages are perhaps the most enduring and complex example, complete with their own underworld economy and lore. So, in modern China, ghost marriage lives on as a sort of spectral thread weaving the past with the present. It has one foot in folklore and one in the tabloids. It is both condemned and quietly condoned, ridiculed and secretly revered. You can find it in both crime reports and heartfelt obituaries. For every gruesome tale of body snatching, there is a quiet, undocumented ceremony where two deceased lovers are united without harm to anyone. For every family that goes to the police to recover a stolen daughter's remains, there's another that slips a bribe to a cemetery caretaker to broker a spirit wedding on the sly. Ghost marriage today is, in a sense, a mirror of China's tug-of-war between tradition and modernity. Mostly left behind, but lingering in the shadows, refusing to fully die. As we contemplate these echoes of ghost marriage in the modern day, it's clear that the custom, however macabre, stems from deeply human emotions: love, loss, duty, and the fear of loneliness. Those haven't changed in thousands of years, even if society's acceptance of the solution has. And thus, a practice from antiquity still finds a way to manifest, like a ghost that refuses to rest until its needs are acknowledged. And so, dear spirit bride, our long night of remembrance comes to an end. The red candles have burnt down to puddles of wax. The incense smoke has thinned to nothing. The ancestors have been appeased, and the restless ghosts given their due. You, who once stood trembling beside a coffin in Qing, China, have lived through your story, and what a story it was. You embraced a fate unimaginable to most, found meaning in it, and carried its weight until the end of your days. In the quiet, final chapter of your life, many years after that fateful wedding, you close your eyes one last time. In that moment, perhaps you see a familiar silhouette waiting in the beyond, a young man in a wedding robe, smiling shyly, finally able to take your hand. The two of you fade into the ancestral throng together, no longer bride and groom, but simply another pair of honored spirits among many. The saga of your mortal life ends not with a thunderclap of horror, but with a gentle sigh of acceptance. As for us, the living listeners tucked safely in our beds, we awaken from this journey through time and tradition with a mix of awe and relief. Awe at the lengths people went to for love, duty, and superstition. relief that we ourselves will likely never have to make such a choice. The specter of ghost marriage while haunting also sheds light on an essential truth. Humans will do extraordinary, sometimes eerie, things to care for those they love, whether in this world or the next. It's easy to judge these practices as creepy or morbid from our modern vantage point. But having walked in the embroidered slippers of a 19th century spirit bride, perhaps you now appreciate the internal logic and emotional drivers behind them. They were trying, in their own way, to cheat the finality of death, to extend the bonds of family beyond the grave. In a world where life was often short and fragile, that desire for harmony and continuity made sense. Consider what you have witnessed tonight. You saw a frightened young woman, yourself, being drawn into a world of incense and shadows out of love and fear. You stood in that moonlit courtyard, heart pounding as a rooster crowed atop a coffin. You bowed to a spirit and became a wife to a ghost. You shared in the bittersweet tenderness of a family embracing you as their dead son's bride, and you bore the weight of solitude that followed. We walked with you through quiet mornings of offering incense to a tablet instead of a husband, through long nights of one-sided conversations with someone who isn't there. We also peered beyond your personal story, into the scandals such traditions bred in later years, the grave robbers and unsanctioned brokers of ghostly matrimony, and the stubborn souls who both exploited and upheld this ritual. It has been a panoramic journey, intimate and emotional at times, chilling and eye-opening at others. Think about it. Ghost marriage was ultimately about connection. No one wanted their loved ones to wander eternity alone. It's a poetic, if macabre, form of compassion. In a culture that valued the family unit above all, even a posthumous symbolic marriage was preferable to eternal bachelorhood or spinsterhood. While we might recoil at the methods, marrying corpses, arranging spouses for ghosts, the intentions came from a heartfelt place. Parents did not wake up one day eager to wed their child to a dead person. They were genuinely afraid for their child's soul or their family's spiritual well-being. And young women like you in our tale often agreed out of a sense of filial piety that was deeply ingrained. They sacrificed personal happiness so that the wheels of cosmic order could keep turning smoothly. History is full of such sacrifices, though few are as peculiar as this. Now, in the comfort of the present, we can gently close the book on these ghostly nuptials. Consider how far we've come. Today, if someone suggested you marry a dead fiancé, you'd likely shake your head in disbelief, and perhaps refer them to a counselor or a lawyer. Our ways of coping with death have changed. We hold memorials. We cherish photographs and digital memories. We might carry on our loved ones' legacies in charities or projects, but we generally stop short of dressing a living person in bridal silks to satisfy a spirit. And yet, the ghost marriage story lingers in cultural imagination, a reminder of a time not so long ago when the boundary between life and afterlife was porous in people's minds, and even the dead were folded into the social fabric through ritual. Perhaps you found parts of this tale unsettling. That's understandable. It is a creepy concept to modern sensibilities. But maybe you also found parts of it touching, even beautiful in a strange way. The idea that love, or at least duty, transcends death, that people cared so deeply about their kin's happiness in the afterlife that they would go to such great lengths. It adds a new layer of meaning to till death do us part, doesn't it? In Qing China, death wasn't even considered a full stop to marriage. It was merely a comma, a pause after which a different kind of union could be arranged. Take a moment to appreciate that you journeyed through this entire experience safely. You felt the weight of centuries-old expectations on your shoulders and walked among incense and shadows, but here you are now, back in your own cozy reality. Look around your dimly lit room, notice the hum of modern life. Perhaps an appliance's soft whir, the faint glow of a phone charging. The ghosts of Qing Dynasty China have been laid to rest in their story, and you have emerged on the other side, perhaps a bit more enlightened, and certainly more grateful not to have been born into that particular tradition. If your eyes are growing heavy now, that's good. Let them close. Imagine, if you will, the gentle rustle of a silk bridal veil settling down, like the curtain falling on a long performance. The spirit bride has done her duty. She can finally sleep, and so can you. Fluff your pillow. Pull your blanket tight. Let the warmth of your bed and the normalcy of the present reassure you. The tale of marrying corpses in ancient China is just that. A tale, a journey we took in our imaginations. The real you is safe and sound. The only spirits in your room are the comforting ones of story and memory, who mean you no harm. Tonight, you've lived through a ghostly marriage and come out the other side. Not many can say that, and certainly none would want to literally do it. As you drift off to sleep, carry with you the understanding that even in the darkest, strangest traditions, there can be light, the light of human love and longing shining through. The world is full of such paradoxical stories, and each one, when understood, makes the human experience feel a little more connected. So rest now, knowing you've walked in someone else's shoes from another time and made it home. Sleep tight, spirit bride. May your dreams be harmonious and your heart be light. Good night.